Ah, breakfast time. I love Israeli breakfast. And you have to start your day somehow, and we start it with breakfast. Here we are in the King Solomon Hotel, and this is our last day of touring. Soon we will leave and head for the Valley of Elah. David and Goliath. Need I say anything else? So let's go, but right after breakfast. Well, here we are in the Valley of Elah, reading from 1 Samuel chapter 17. Now the Philistines gathered their armies together to battle and were gathered at Socho, which belongs to Judah. They encamped between Socho and Azekah in Ephes Damim. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together, and they encamped in the Valley of Elah, and drew up in battle array against the Philistines. The Philistines stood on a mountain on one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, with a valley between them. And a champion went out from the camp of the Philistines named Goliath from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He was big. Well, he threatens them and says, choose a champion. If he's able to fight with me and kill me, verse 9, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us. And the Philistines said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. He didn't know they were going to give him a boy. But anyway, verse 13, the 3 oldest sons of Jesse had gone to follow Saul to the battle. The names of his 3 sons who went to the battle were Eliab the firstborn, next to him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest, and the 3 oldest followed Saul. But David occasionally went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. And the Philistine drew near and presented himself 40 days, morning and evening. Then Jesse said to his son David, take now for your brothers an ephah of this dried grain and these 10 loaves, and run to your brothers at the camp, and carry these 10 cheeses to the captain of their 1,000, and see how your brothers fare, and bring back news of them. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the Valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. David arose early in the morning, left the sheep with the keeper, and took the things, and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the camp as the army was going out to the fight, and shouting for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had drawn up in battle array, army against army. And David left his supplies in the hand of the supply keeper, ran to the army, and came and greeted his brothers. Then as he talked with them, there was the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, coming up from the armies of the Philistines, and he spoke according to the same words. So David heard them. And all of the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were dreadfully afraid. So the men of Israel said, have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel, and it shall be that the man who kills him, the king will enrich him with great riches, will give him his daughter, and give his father's house exemption from taxes in Israel. So David already has a pretty good motive going here. Let's go down to verse 28. No, let's keep reading. Let's keep reading. Then David spoke to the men who stood by him, saying, what shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him in this manner, saying, so shall it be done for the man who kills him. Now Eliab, his oldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger was aroused against David, and said, why did you come down here? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride. Now he's saying this to David. I know your pride and the insolence of your heart. For you've come down to see the battle. And David said, What have I done now? Is there not a cause? Then he turned from him toward another and said the same thing, and these people answered him as the first ones did. Well, then David, let's go on to verse 32. Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant, speaking of himself, will go and fight with this Philistine. Now, I wonder why they call David proud and insolent. I have an idea. It's because David so trusted the Lord that the things that had happened in his life as he speaks of God doing it, these other guys who had never experienced, apparently, the power of God saying, you're just proud and insolent. It's sort of similar, isn't it, to a fella named Joseph saying to his brothers and to his mother and dad that they would all bow down before him. You know, that wasn't exactly a wise thing to be saying, and it was rather costly to him. Well, David informs them of some of the things that God had helped him do. Moreover, David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of the Philistine. And Saul said to David, go, and the Lord, or Yahweh, be with you. We're off to a good start here. Now let me just say, there are sometimes Goliaths in our lives that just terrify us. And they terrify us because they are so frightening. They are so brazen. They're so loud. They're so big. And you think, who could possibly handle them? Maybe you have some Goliaths in your life. Well, here's the secret. Go, and the Lord be with you. Well, Saul put his own armor on David, and David said, I cannot walk with these, for I have not tested them. Now, he had tested God. He knew what God would do, but he didn't know what this armor would do. So he decides, I'm not going to depend on man's armor. I'm going to go with what I know. I know what God will do. Then he took his staff in his hand, and he chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook, put them in a shepherd's bag in a pouch which he had, and his sling was in his hand. And he drew near to the Philistine. So the Philistine came and began drawing near to David. And the man who bore the shield went before him. Poor David. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was only a youth, ruddy and good-looking. Poor David. So the Philistine said to David, am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. Poor David. And the Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. Oh, poor David. Then David said to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword and a spear and a javelin. Yeah, poor David. But I come to you in the name of Yahweh of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Poor Goliath. This day Yahweh will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you and take your head from you. And this day I will give the carcasses of the camp of the Philistines to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know there is a God in Israel. I love this. If it were me, I would have said, all the earth will know there's a David in Israel. But David had it right. If he's going in the name of the Lord will get the glory. So it was. When the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David, David hurried and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. This was no, I got to think of a good tactic here. Maybe if I hide behind this and sneak up on him, maybe if we do some fast turnarounds and a few flip-flops and a good karate chop, who knows? No. He ran to meet him because he knew who his Lord was. He had tested him. David put his hand in his bag, took out a stone. He slung it and struck the Philistine in his forehead, so that the stone sank into his forehead, and he fell on his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, struck the Philistine, killed him, but there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran, stood over the Philistine, took his sword, drew it out of its sheath. Poor Goliath never even had a chance to draw his sword. Never had a chance to get his shields together. And he cut off his head with it. And when the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. David took the head of the Philistine, brought it to Jerusalem, and he put his armor in his tent. So David simply trusted the Lord. It was no big plan. There was no big logistics involved. It was just a fearless facing of the best the enemy could put together. And the simple answer was, I come to you in the name of Yahweh. I come to you in the name of the Lord. There are a lot of systems that will teach us to face our Goliaths with willpower, or that will teach us to face our Goliaths with certain little psychological tricks and things of that nature. But believe me, those don't kill Goliaths. But we do know what does. Now you can be sure, as intelligent a warrior as Saul was, if he knew just how to handle Goliath, he would have figured it out. They weren't unintelligent. So the smartest you will ever be will never handle a Goliath, nor would it ever handle in Jesus' time a man with a legion of demons, and a city couldn't handle him. But in the name of the Lord, Goliaths fall. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Amen.